Hey everybody, good Sunday afternoon at this point. I'm First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Patterson. Update on Tropical Storm Arthur. As expected, Arthur kind of doing what we expected. And even though there's tropical storm warnings up and we never want to discount a system, this really isn't that big of a deal for the coast except for the Outer Banks because we're worried about overwash. This is not going to be a big wind threat, really not a big rain threat. It's really about swells, water, and rip currents. And we'll talk more about that. Now, a very unique system. You know, we talked that it might have been a subtropical system or tropical. It got classified as a tropical system, but it's got some characteristics of a lopsided subtropical system. What I mean by that is if you look on the west side, there's actually not that bad of weather. All the worst weather's on the east side. So as this thing stays just offshore, not only is the center offshore, but the worst stuff is on the east side of the storm. So I've had a lot of questions this morning about, is it a washout at the beach? It's actually completely sunny right now in most locations on the coast because the west side is very dry. You can see the system. There's just not a lot there. It's a nice swirl, but there's not a lot of thunderstorm activity or even big rain bands. What this is going to lack in intensity, it's going to make up for duration. It's going to be out there for a while. It's been there since yesterday. It's going to be there through tomorrow, and it's going to be off the East Coast over Tuesday. So just the fact that it's sitting out here for a while is pushing water towards the coast. So while it's not a big wind threat and it's really not a big rain threat, the bigger concern is going to be water. So especially here on the Outer Banks where I expect there to be some pretty good overwash, especially on the Outer Banks. Highway 12 probably will have some overwash just because of the prolonged period of onshore winds, and rip currents up and down the coast will be nasty. So please make sure if you're out the coast, stay away from the water. In fact, I was looking at some of the beach cams here. It's completely sunny as the sea breeze is gone, and there are some showers or some bands of showers, but all in all, it's not a washout at all at any point over the next 24 hours on the beaches because of the track of the system. So let me show you the track. There's the center. 45 mile an hour winds. It's moving north-northeast at about 9 miles an hour. So we'll play this and pause it a couple times. Let me grab this. And you can see it's going to strengthen over the Gulf Stream. 8 p.m. tonight, it's a tropical storm still. Then it makes a really close pass to the Outer Banks early tomorrow morning. So the worst weather on the Outer Banks is going to be tomorrow. Remember, the west side of this thing is really weak. All the worst weather's out here. So the worst weather, the closest approach of winds is going to be right there on the Outer Banks. So very typical weak system, almost nor'easter type setup. And then it starts moving away pretty quickly. And then it starts to slow down and becomes extra tropical and kind of sits offshore and just becomes nothing out here. So you can see in the long range, it's just going to be kind of a mess out there. Now, as far as the winds are concerned, let me show you the wind speeds we're expecting. So let's look at those tropical storm force winds. We expect about an 80% chance of seeing those out at Hatteras, 45 at Nags Head, 60 at Morehead City. And you can see the rapid drop off. I mean, this is a really tight gradient. Strongest winds will be way out here off to the east. So really, very few people will notice that this thing is actually near the coast, unless somebody told you that it was out there as it moves away. Now, let's look at a couple other things. I'll look at the satellite image. You can see how dry it is on the west side. There are some clouds moving inland, but that's not a really ideal looking tropical system. And the water vapor loop shows us what we're going to be dealing with here, I think, over the next couple of days, is this larger system back to the west. You can see the two swirls, one there and one there. And here's Arthur. So Arthur is going to do this. It's going to follow this path. This thing is going to become a big low pressure system. And actually this low is going to get cut off from the upper flow, and it's going to be our big rainmaker. So we are going to see wet weather for the Western Carolinas, but it's not going to be driven by Arthur. It's going to be driven by this thing coming in from the west. So that's what we're going to be watching, is this big blob. You see it up here. Look at this. What's more impressive, that swirl or this swirl? This is the one we need to watch right there. That's the swirl we're watching, and that's going to move down here and sit over us the next couple of days. So let me turn off some things here, and let's look at some of the guidance. We'll go out into the future here. I'll do this as I'm talking to you. We'll pull this up. I'm going to do the NAM here because this will give us a nice short range. And you can see we'll go into time. Notice how lopsided the system is. It's kind of, just passing showers tomorrow. Look at this stuff back to the west. There's the circulation approaching the Outer Banks early tomorrow morning. This is a little farther west than the guidance. I'm going to put the hurricane track back on here. You could see this guidance has it a little bit farther west than the actual the model. Let's look at the GFS. It's about the same spot. You kind of see they're all in the general area. So we'll watch to see how close it gets, but you could see definitely kind of a mess tomorrow morning on the coast. I think the worst weather will be Monday morning. It certainly looks to be the case. And then it starts moving away, and we'll put this into motion. Goes off that way. And then look what's going on to the west. So this is by tomorrow afternoon. Starts to move away. Our weather actually being driven more by this, and then we could see some strong thunderstorms associated with that line. So there is a low risk for severe weather tomorrow evening as the rain moves in. And then you can see what's going on. This upper level system becomes a much bigger player, and it kind of sits over us. So we start seeing some pretty wet weather through the middle of the week. Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe even into Thursday, as this broad area of low pressure kind of sits. I mean, look at this thing. This thing is just a mess. So Arthur becomes the less of an issue, and this thing becomes our big player for weather. So yeah, Arthur's out there. We're keeping an eye on it. It's really, not more or less of an issue than I would say this low coming in from the west. But if you're in the Outer Banks, be ready. Some coastal flooding, certainly a possibility. Rip currents and swells are going to be the biggest issue with all of this. So just remember, please stay away from the water if you can until this thing gets further off the sea. And then we'll turn our attention to this thing to the west. We'll go back and show you the track there just offshore. So again, remember the cone could be here or here. It's not in the middle. It's somewhere in between. So the fact that it's going to be that close to the Outer Banks, that's why you have, obviously for good reason. Let me go back to here real quickly. Whoops. I'm gonna show you the tropical storm warnings that are in effect. Actually, let me pull that up real quick. I'm going to pull this up really quickly just to show you the tropical storm warning for everybody on the coast. So there you go. There's the tropical storm warning in effect. And that's the area that will see the worst of the weather starting tomorrow, but lasting into the afternoon. Of course, I'll do updates tomorrow if things change. If you're on the coast, please be safe. Stay away from the water. Tomorrow, we'll start talking about the chance for thunderstorms and the heavy rain threat that is going to be moving in for the western Carolinas associated with that upper low. Have a great Sunday, everybody.